All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Charter Study Commission webinar. I'm Matt Speltz, and I'll be moderating tonight. Joining me are the 5 members who were selected to serve on the Millburn Charter Study Commission. We have Chair Chris Drucker, Vice Chair Corey Biller, Jerry Kung, Joanna Parker-Lance, Chinook Tana. They spent 5 months studying Millburn's existing township committee form of government. After their deep dive, they voted unanimously to recommend a change to our local government structure, which will be put to Millburn voters on Tuesday, June 16th. Tonight, they're here to explain their recommendation and answer any of your questions. So we'll do 20 minutes of content, and then we'll open it up to you guys. If you have any questions, please drop it in the chat. We've also collected questions in advance, so we'll try to get as many as you can tonight. Go for it, Chris.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Matt. Last November, 65% of Millburn voters wanted to know if there's a better way to run our local government than our current township committee form. We were elected to conduct that study, and we took it seriously. We spent 5 months interviewing current and former municipal employees, township committee members, and appointed and elected officials from other comparable towns. We held 18 public meetings and conducted more than 40 structured interviews. Of the TC members we interviewed, half were Democrats, half were Republicans. They had a collective governing experience of 76 years, and they spanned a period going back 35 years. We found, hang on a second, please. Keep going. What we found in this, Millburn is a great town being held back by outdated government structure. Simply put, our form of government was designated in a different era. So tonight, let me get this going here, please. Okay, right. So tonight we want to tell you what we found, what we're recommending, and what we think June 16 Millburn chances set itself up for the next 100 years.
All right, thanks, Chris. So what you're saying is that the commission found some real problems in how Millburn is currently operating. Corey, let's start there. What does the current system actually do, and where do you feel that it falls short?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. First, I wanted to just make sure that people understood or understand that I and my fellow commissioners are providing answers based on empirical data that we collected over a period of about 6 months and the numerous interviews and probably more than 100 hours of study and feedback. It's not just speculation and conjecture that's being put out there, frankly, to potentially scare people, but based on our own study. There are many things that work in Millburn's government, which is why our proposal does not recommend an overhaul, but really, for the most part, small edits to make our government even better. And so, for example, and to answer your question, one consistent message we heard from both township employees and township committee members from both parties, by the way, is that the 3-year term that Millburn currently uses with elections every year are disruptive, and they prevent work from getting actually done. So the township committee members spend basically 1 year currently learning the job. Then in year 2, they're getting stuff done. But then in year 3, what we've heard is really they are either campaigning against again to stay on as a council member, or acting essentially as a lame duck if they don't wish to run again. And that leaves basically little more than a year out of the 3-year term to actually be effective. And talk about sort of the empirical data that we sort of learned as our study. In the last 10 years, only 2 committee members have actually completed more than 1 term, which means we're consistently turning over. projects get dropped, institutional knowledge walks out the door, and long-term planning, what we learned is pretty much impossible. Working with the township employees, they say it's very difficult with the 3-year term. And you can just look at things like the complete street projects from several years ago. You know, you have one section of town that work was completed. Whether or not you like the type of work that was completed is not relevant, but you have a project that was half completed. You have the affordable housing issue that gets bounced around. There's also the town hall renovation that's been on and off repeatedly for probably 20 years. You have the Gateway project, which was approved by 2 members who were on their way out and then abandoned for the next committee meeting, the next committee that was elected. So our recommendation is that annual elections paired with 3-year terms are just too short and don't produce accountability. They produce just churn and impetus to actually getting things done.
Yeah, and then there's the partisan election system, right? When we interviewed folks, everyone said the same thing. Local issues are not partisan. Roads, infrastructure, public safety, flood management, there's really no Republican or Democratic way to fix a pothole. So all we want is the best people in our town, incentivized to serve. But our current system is structurally excluding 43% of Millburn voters who are unaffiliated. Now, they do have the right to run as independents, but that's not a viable path. I'm one of those 43%. I pride myself on being an independent voter. But in the entire history of our town, there's never been an independent elected to the township committee. I think that's doing a huge disservice to our community. We have local problems that require local solutions, and we are shutting out nearly half the town before the conversation even starts. So the reforms we are proposing really level the playing field for everyone, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or unaffiliated, you get an equal shot at getting elected.
So, Chinook, if I could just piggyback on what you're starting to say, I think, in my experience, I mean, I think you guys all know that Chris and I do a lot of volunteering. I know, Corey, you do as well. And Matt, I think all of us, right, do a lot of volunteering in town. And I talk to people who I don't ever know what their political party is when I'm doing work for free for the town, because I don't really care. I care about people who come out and care about doing good for the town. So in my experience of meeting people who I don't know whether they're unaffiliated, affiliated, whatever they are, they tend to know what I am because I'm pretty vocal about it. And I kind of find out sometimes here and there. But what I found out from some of my friends who through the years have said, as I've tried to get people to go run, because I am not running for political office. My mother vowed to kill me if I run for political office. And you all know my mother is very serious. So I'm scared of her. You guys all should be scared of her too. She said she would also threaten the lives of those around me if they got me to run. So ain't happening. So for me, I always try to get good people to run, which Corey, I know we were really excited about you running many years ago. And I'm concerned when people tell me really good people who volunteer with me, I'm like, they're such hard workers. They care about the town. They're like, hey, I can't be unaffiliated. I can't be anything other than unaffiliated for my job. So if I have to run, I'm not going to win as an independent. They kind of know that from the beginning. And they're like, why would I set myself up for failure and have this campaign and then not win? Because historically, that just has been the case in our town. So I feel like there's just potentially really good people out there that won't run if they have to affiliate, or whether they don't want to piss off their family because they don't want to say they're one thing or another. And they might have been brought up a certain way. And they're like, well, I'm not that party, but that's how I was brought up in my family, but I'm really something different. I don't really want to tell my parents that I'm actually a closet Democrat, So it's like, that is what concerned me about not getting the best people out there to have the ability to be on the same level playing field. And we were also told by, past TC members who were potentially one-term people, and they're like, hey, I don't really care what, the party from above tells me what to do. But they said, and one of the people who was actually a proponent of the No campaign had an open letter that said, there was people that you had to potentially hire for the township positions. And they got pressure from their party organizations to make sure that certain personnel decisions or vote a certain way on issues such as affordable housing. And if they were not obeying what the party line was, then they would be potentially removed from committees or not receive, the blessing to run in the future. So I was concerned about that when Chris and I interviewed, someone that we heard that. Jerry and I interviewed somebody else. We heard the same thing. So it's just one of those things that got me a little bit like salty. And I think everybody out there knows that I am a Democrat. I make no bones about it. I don't think we're going to have a lot of people hiding certain things, but if people don't want to have to force their affiliation, why should we make them? Let them run if they're good candidates, if they're good volunteers and they care about the town.
Thanks, Joanne. Jerry, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah. So another issue that we found with our current form of government is that it's just too small to get any work done on behalf of residents. So our town has 22,000 residents, and the annual budget is about $75 million. And all of that is overseen by just 5 township committee members. So in all of the interviews that we did, TC members indicated spending about 20 to 25 hours each week. TC members receive a $7,500 annual stipend. And if you do out the math on that, the 20 to 25 hours each week, that works out to about $7 an hour. It's less than minimum wage, and they're essentially volunteers. So the TC members are, simply put, they're just overworked. Some of them are on as many as 8 subcommittees, boards, and commissions. And all of this contributes to burnout and churn that Corey mentioned a little earlier. If one person isn't pulling their weight, every other person's workload gets about 25% worse. And if there's a single recusal, the probability of gridlock becomes very high. Sunshine laws in New Jersey prohibit a quorum of a public body from gathering to discuss or deliberate official business outside of a public meeting. And what that means is that with a 5-member committee, a quorum is 3 people, and thus township committee members currently are limited to one-on-one conversations. This severely limits any subcommittee to just 2 people, and that's definitely not enough to have a productive working session or to dig deep into the details as to a thorough analysis for what should be presented to the larger governing body. I also wanted to note here that almost all the boards and commissions in town have more than 5 members, yet somehow the body responsible for all of them has fewer than all of the other boards. So it really doesn't make sense that the most important board in our town has so few people.
All right, thanks, Jerry. Okay, so you guys have mentioned a lot of downsides to the current system. On the other side, is there anything that's working well?
There sure is. I can start off on that. The one thing that has provided stability and continuity through all of the churn of elected officials is our BA position, the business administrator position. This is an appointed professional who manages the day-to-day operations of the town. For more than 40 years, the township committee has delegated through a local ordinance significant executive authority to the BA position. This position has had great stability. The first BA served for like 31 years. The current one is coming up on 10 years. And that stability has helped compensate for the turnover of the elected officials of the committee. The financial practices instituted by the BA and the CFO have contributed very significantly to our town earning a AAA municipal bond rating. But, and this is important, the professional management under the BA is defined under local ordinance. So theoretically, a simple majority of the township committee could eliminate that position anytime, though of course it's through all the protections that an ordinance needs to go through. But again, that's not a great way to run our town.
And Shanak, I just wanted to add is the folks who are opposed to this recommendation are trying to create an impression that what we're proposing is this radical new way, that this new position, but that in fact is not the case.
That's not the case. Actually, in the wisdom of the people of the township committee in the past made them see the pitfalls of the township committee acting in executive capacity. That's what it is designed to do. But they realized as governance gets more complicated, that's not the way to do it. And they crafted the BA ordinance to really mirror what the council manager form recommends, which is policy authority, legislature in the hands of the council and executive authority in the hands of the administrator. We are practically already doing what the council manager form wants. And what we are recommending really just continues us on that path and keeps what works for us well.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what the recommendation it codifies by state law what we currently have in the township administrator, just calling it a township manager instead, and protects that role because Matt, to your question, based on our interviews and our research, it's working really well in township. So we're
Right.
not really it's not really a change despite what is being presented as this radical change and giving power to some new role. That in fact is a fallacy, a complete utter mischaracterization. We're just what's being codified is what we currently have, and because it's working well, and that's what everyone says from both parties.
Okay, so taking that into account, what is it exactly that the commission is actually recommending? CD, want to start with you?
Sure. We're recommending that Millburn adopt what is called a council manager form of government. Before your eyes glaze over, Corey said my little spiel here. Let me tell you what it actually means for your life in this town. It means that the same professional management we've come to rely on is now protected by state law rather than local ordinance. The name will simply change from business administrator to township manager. We recommend the recommendation also includes a seven-person council elected through nonpartisan elections. Council members serve four-year staggered terms, so there are elections every 2 years. And there are some new powers for residents initiative and referendum that don't exist today. And I'll let each of the commissioners explain these aspects. Now, folks, Chris Strucker moved to Millburn Township in 1981. I've seen an all Republican township committee. I've seen an all Democrat township committee. And when we interviewed Tim Gordon, the former business administrator, he said to us, Jerry Kahn and I interviewed Tim Gordon. He said the best township committee he had, that there were two guys on it. One was he was a strong Republican, and the other guy was a strong Democrat. And when they came time to get something done in town, both guys sat in the room and said, "What is good for Millburn Township?" So therefore, I am strongly recommending non-affiliated township members for the town council.
Yeah, and look, this is again being portrayed as something radical and different, and it's really not. And again, I started off by saying we based our recommendation on studies, empirical information, objective information, not speculation and fear mongering. 57% of all municipalities in the United States operate one under the council manager form, and 77% of all municipalities hold on nonpartisan elections. So, contrary to the fear mongering that's being produced by an interested party that has hired a professional PR firm to engage in this fear mongering and proliferation of nonsense and red herrings and everything else, in fact, we're not doing anything that's radical. We're not suggesting anything that's earth shaking. We're doing something that most municipalities are already how they're already governing themselves. And regarding nonpartisan elections, and the one of the things is, hey, this is going to cost all sorts of tons of money and things like that. First of all, nonpartisan elections remove the needs for primaries, which are a waste of time, money, and effort in Millburn, because we don't have open primaries for the township committee. I don't think people recognize that. You know, primaries are good where it gives people the power to choose who in their party is going to run. But instead, in Millburn, the local parties decide based on their own agendas who should run for TC. So the point of the primary is there is no point. It's just a lot of waste of money and time. With nonpartisan elections, we would have no more gatekeeping by local political committees. There'd be no loyalty oaths, which certain political parties require. There's no litmus test just to run for a party line. Elections would be conducted exactly like the Board of Ed elections that we have now. So again, it's not a radical change. It's something that our township residents are used to because of our Board of Ed elections are nonpartisan. Candidates like the Board of Ed can run as a slate if they want, and the same slate, you can have people who are Democrats or Republicans, unaffiliated, all running together. And in fact, from our studies of other towns who are nonpartisan, they report that oftentimes that they have cross-party slates, and it helps with collaboration. I know the opposition is saying that it also causes less transparent elections, but in actuality, we found as a commission that the party label is actually misleading on the local level because people vote without a lot of information and they vote based on a party label, not knowing the actual positions or the qualifications of the candidates, or even if the people that are running actually have any qualifications or positions themselves. I recall a meeting very recently where it was held at somebody's house and to meet the candidate forum. And I asked this particular individual, hey, so you're running for township council, what's your positions? And he said to me, I don't think that's fair. I haven't ever sat on the township committee. How should I know what my positions are? I mean, and this person won because they had a label next to their name, not because they themselves admitted they had no positions. So they won without any positions, but because they had a label, people voted for them. And so it's actually it prevents transparency and it allows for people to be elected who are not qualified and who might not even have any strong positions, which allow for special interests to interfere in our local politics, which Joanna kind of alluded to earlier. We have had a former township council member come out after the party kicked her out, essentially, and so she outed the party and she wrote a letter, a public letter that's available to everyone, that acknowledged that the Millburn Township Council is not only subject to the potential for corruption, but actually has suffered from corruption in the last 10 years. We can help do away with that by having nonpartisan elections. And contrary to what the no people are saying, it actually allows for more transparency because more people will have to learn and ask people about what their actual policies are and their qualifications are. And you're voting for people based on that, not an arbitrary label. It prevents people from just coasting on a label, and they have to earn your vote. At the end of the day, that's what this is about, is getting the best people to serve in Millburn, not just the people who have the right connections and who have a particular label next to their name. It's about getting the best qualified people, just like we have for the Board of Ed, which has worked for so many years.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go on about it. I don't know if any of the other commissioners, have their own opinions, but there are other advantages. I can leave it to my fellow former commissioners to sort of discuss their perspectives on it.
Well, I think so. I'm going to just interject for 1 second, moving on from that, because I think there are a lot of people concerned that partisanship won't go away, even though there's a nonpartisan government, right? And that may be the case. And I can't begin to predict or assume, because what happens when you assume. But all I can tell you is our past experience of interviewing people, from the partisan, nonpartisan situation, and just from the governing body, for example, going from 5 to 7. I had my own reservations about it. And that's been in recorded sessions in the past. But just to bring that up for a second, I feel like just that sheer movement from 5 to 7 at the moment will, and we touched upon this before, Jerry talked about it, people talk about, it's going to be so much more expensive and it's bigger government. Okay, it's bigger government by 2 people, but we know in our group of 5, we sometimes didn't have the ability to talk amongst ourselves as a group of anything more than 2 people in behind the scenes, because we followed those rules and we had to. And we are not as important as the TC or if it gets voted on for the council manager position to make those bigger decisions. If you have 3 voices, it's a bit more, you hold each other accountable. There's room for debate, discussion that, it's quicker to get to an answer. So I think that, allowing the burden to be shared among, look, $7,500 is not a lot of money per year, as we pointed out already. So it will cost us 68 cents per household, I believe, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody else there, but 68 per household, 68 cents per household to have 2 more people. Why wouldn't you want 2 more people to, to have their opinions, to have more of the town represented? Our town is growing. It's been growing since I moved here, and we're just going to get bigger, for better or for worse. Apartments are coming in, more of them are coming in. We are growing. And this government allows us, what we're recommending, to grow within what is happening, for the future. So we're future proofing, and we're allowing the almost free work that happens by these individuals who are being voted on, give them a little bit more room to allow to work and work on the government. So it doesn't allow, people who are just retired or who aren't working to run for office. I feel like having 7 people just gives more eyeballs on that budget. The budget's a big budget. Why have only 5 people have opinions on it? We have a very smart town. We have a lot of great citizens who live here. Give 2 more voices, the opportunity to weigh in on the big decisions. So I feel like, it also allows, with our recommending the 4 years, there's more senior members to mentor people, and we put recommendations in our notes to mentor people. So I feel like, it will just allow for a better neighbor working environment to have the 7 people rather than 5.
Great. I'll jump in a little on the term length. So we're recommending a change from the current 3-year term to a 4-year term. And instead of having elections every year, we're planning to have elections every 2 years. This was basically to address a lot of the churn that we've seen in the last 10 years. So in the last 10 years, there's only been 2 township committee members that have served 2 terms, and none have served more than that. So the proposed form of government with the 4-year terms directly addresses the issues that we identified: the churn issue, the lame ducks, and the projects that never get finished. With 4-year terms, council members would actually have enough time to gain expertise. They've lived through multiple budget cycles, a few bond ordinances, and a large capital project, and they'd come out the other side knowing what exactly they're doing. With that experience, they would be able to shepherd initiatives to completion and actually be held accountable, or have credit attributed for the good things that they've done. So the annual whipsaw that we've been experiencing for quite a while now, that would go away. We wouldn't need to continuously bring new members up to speed every 12 months, which is a huge burden on our municipal staff. And that would also mean that the governing body can actually have some experience and utilize that experience in getting things done. Right now, with the annual election cycle, it's impossible for anyone to know who's responsible for what, because one person can serve alongside as many as 8 different people during a 3-year term. So the 4-year term with elections every other year would help a lot with providing the stability and continuity to get long-term planning done.
I would also add that this form of government we're recommending gives residents a power that they don't have today. That's direct democracy through initiative and referendum. What that means in practice is this: if the governing body passes an ordinance you disagree with, residents can collect signatures and force a binding public vote on it before it gets enacted. Now, there are some limitations to that power. You need 15% of the voters in the last general assembly election to sign on to that measure. So it's not as if you can oppose anything and everything. So there are limitations, but this is something, and if there's something you want done that the council hasn't acted on, you can use that same petition process to put it directly on the ballot. So you don't have to wait for the next election cycle. You go straight to the voters, again, with adequate protections. Take the sports fields debate as an example, right? Instead of waiting years for elected officials to act, residents could have gathered signatures and held a binding referendum to get it done. The same tool works in reverse. If the council passes a development or zoning ordinance you oppose, residents can gather signatures, and enough are collected, it forces a public vote before the ordinance can take effect. There's one more thing worth saying. If we vote yes, and a few years from now, we decide we want to revisit certain features, the size of the council, how the mayor is elected, any of the structural choices we're making, the Faulkner Act gives us a path to do that. We are not locked in forever. I really want to emphasize that. If you don't like one or two of the things that are being proposed, but like other things, you can change things in the future. What we don't have right now is that flexibility. Under the current form, there is no initiative, no referendum, no optionality for partisan versus non-partisan elections, no escape from the annual election cycle. You can't directly vote a mayor even if you want to. A yes vote doesn't just improve our government, it gives residents real tools to shape it going forward based on empirical evidence of what's working.
All right, great, guys. Let's move on to questions. Thanks for explaining all of this. Before we go to the audience questions, I've prepared a couple to get started. Number one, some people in town have been concerned that this is considered a risky overhaul. Could you perhaps give us some examples of towns that have gone through this change recently, and what was their experience?
Oh, I got this. So Red Bank made this exact transition 2 years ago. A 7-person nonpartisan council manager form is what they, went to. We interviewed 2 of their current council members, Nancy, if I'm pronouncing it, Facey Blackwood. She chaired their charter study commission, and Ben Forrest, who also served as commissioner. When they described what was their annual partisan elections had been toxic for their community, there was constant turnover, there was instability, there was dysfunction. Hopefully people can go back and watch that video. It's super informative. Since making their switch, they've really seen a lot of stability and accountability. They said it was night and day. I highly encourage people to go back and watch that video. It was really informative for me. It was a pivotal, interview. What sort of struck me the most is both Nancy and Ben are Democrat district leaders in Red Bank. They had the option to keep partisan elections, and that would have advantaged their party, right? So they chose not to. That was like key for me. Ben told us that keeping partisan elections would have disenfranchised 36% of Red Bank's populations, right, who are independents. And he found that prospect, in his words, were morally abhorrent, from what I recall. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody else. But that's a Democratic Party leader choosing to give up a structural advantage because it was the right thing to do for the town. I mean, it shouldn't be about which party has the advantage. I mean, it should be about what's right for the community as a whole, right?
All right, cool. Another question. Let's talk funding. Essex County government is partisan. So if we go to nonpartisan elections, would that lower the amount of grant funding that our town receives from the county?
So this was an issue actually that I was concerned with. And actually a former TC member had raised it. And so we specifically looked at the data, and what we found was actually the opposite of that concern. In the most recent round of New Jersey's community development block grants, 6 of the 9 towns that receive funding hold nonpartisan elections. So every single nonpartisan town received a 6-figure grant, and the partisan towns received 5-figure grants, which are all, this is all cited in our reports. And I'm not suggesting that the data supports the idea that going nonpartisan puts us at a disadvantage with the county. If anything, the data suggests the opposite. Now, again, I don't necessarily think there's a correlation between nonpartisan and getting grants or getting more grants, but the data definitely shows us that nonpartisan towns still receive grants and in fact receive higher grants than the partisan election towns.
Okay. All right. According to the commission's report, one of the most important factors in recommending nonpartisan elections was the 43% of Millburn voters that are unaffiliated. Is there evidence of nonpartisan systems allowing unaffiliated voters to have a chance of actually winning a seat?
So I'll take this one because I've been doing a lot of research into this issue because I personally find it very interesting. In terms of no independent has ever been elected to township committee in our town. And so, I went and, looked into some of the data. And a lot of the reasons why someone can't win as an independent right now is that they're structurally disadvantaged from the start of the process. So yes, they can run in a general election, but they're going to get worse ballot placement. They have no party infrastructure behind them, and the evidence speaks for itself. No one has ever won a seat in our entire history in this town. In nonpartisan towns, the results actually look very different. So Verona has a nonpartisan council manager form, and we actually interviewed their current mayor, I believe back in early March. The recording is on our website. He's actually an unaffiliated voter. Ridgewood also has nonpartisan council manager, and they have one of 5 sitting council members who's unaffiliated. West Windsor as well. They had nonpartisan elections in West Windsor, but they're mayor council rather than council manager. 2 of their 5 council members are unaffiliated. And actually, in their most recent election, the council president, who's a Democrat, and the council vice president, who's a Republican, they co-wrote an endorsement and endorsed 2 unaffiliated candidates who ended up winning. So I find that to be very inspiring. It's sort of a different state of the world than what we're used to, but I think that's hopefully what we'll be able to have in this town in the future, and that's certainly what local government looks like when party labels get out of the way in other towns.
All right, thanks. All right, this is my favorite question because it was the first question I asked. The commission's recommendation was for an indirectly elected mayor, which means that the mayor is selected from the council, similar to how we operate today under the township committee. Can you guys walk me through why you didn't recommend a direct election of the mayor?
I would like to take this one. This was something a lot of us came around to. Honestly, going into the process, I probably had a bias for a directly elected mayor a little bit. Obviously, I wanted to study the issue. So it seemed like a good idea to have a directly elected mayor, but the more we learned, the clearer it became that it would actually create problems. The most important thing for us is that in a council manager form, the mayor is not the executive. The professional manager is, and that's the continuity of our system that we're talking about. The mayor chairs the council, has one equal vote like everyone else. A directly elected mayor implies executive authority that simply does not exist in the form we're recommending. It sends the wrong signal about the role, and it selects for the wrong skills. Mayoralty campaign rewards name recognition and retail politics. What you actually want is a council chair is someone their colleagues can trust and respect, and the council is best positioned to make that judgment. There's also a structural accountability issue. A directly elected mayor serves a fixed 4-year term, and if they're not performing, the council can't remove them. You're stuck. There's a talent problem. The runner-up in a mayoral race who might be an excellent council member gets nothing. The town loses them entirely. Under the indirect model, both can run for council and both can serve. And consider a sitting council member decides midterm that they want to run for mayor. That campaign is a distraction from the governance they've elected to do. And if they win, they vacate the remainder of their council seat, triggering a vacancy, disrupting continuity. It just creates the kind of instability we are trying to fix. So there's a lot of structural barriers and collateral damage for a position that is really a first among equals. The council as a legislative body should speak in one voice. The indirect model keeps it that way. The mayor is chosen by their peers, accountable to the full body. And honestly, if you're someone who doesn't like what I just said and wants a directly elected mayor, that option exists under the council manager form. The Faulkner Act gives us the tools to revisit structural choices down the road. What doesn't give you the direct option is staying with the current township form we have. So if a directly elected mayor is ultimately where the community wants to go, voting yes at least gets you a path to get there, and voting no closes that door entirely.
All right, so speaking of vacancies, would there be any changes on how vacancies would be filled?
This is Chris Strucker. I'll take that one. Currently, if there's a vacancy on the township committee, the county party committee of the departing member party proposes 3 names, and the remaining committee members choose from those 3. These party committees are not accountable to the people of Millburn. They're part of a county party structure. And we saw recently that can look like an in nearby and in a nearby town The entire local party committee was removed by county party officials for perceived disloyalty for endorsing the other party's candidate for state office. Those are the people deciding who fills a vacancy on your governing body. In a non-party system, any eligible Millburn resident can put their name forward. The remaining council members vote on it. The same process uses for the Board of Ed vacancies. The decision stays local and it stays with the people who are directly accountable to this community.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, we've got some questions that have come in from the audience, so we'll kick those off. Start with number one here. Don't annual elections keep officials more accountable to voters? Can someone answer that?
I'll take that one. This one comes up a lot. So the issue with the annual elections is that you're not actually voting for the same person each year, right? So township committee members, they serve 3-year terms. And what you are voting on each year is you're voting on 1 or 2 seats that rotate through the township committee. So this idea that annual elections create more accountability doesn't really make sense because, after the first year, you're not voting for the person that just got on the committee, right? And so in practice, what actually happens is that the annual elections produce so much turnover and churn that it's nearly impossible to figure out who did what and who's accountable for what, right? So I went back and I looked at the historical record on this. And if you look at Tara Prupus's second term, I believe it was 2022 to 2024, she actually served alongside 8 different people in that 3-year term. So, when something goes wrong, how are you supposed to figure out who's to blame? And if something went well, how do you know who gets the credit? You're evaluating one person 3 years hence when they've served with 8 different people. It's almost like musical chairs, right? So this notion that elections every year creates accountability, well, it doesn't, right? What it does is it creates chaos because what we've seen is in the last 10 years, there's only been 2 people that served more than 1 term. And if people aren't running for more than 1 term, then what really is the accountability mechanism? No one knows how to judge anyone. No one has the adequate opportunity to govern long enough with a consistent set of people or policies for anyone to judge it. So, it's one of those arguments that you see on the face of it makes sense, but when you dig in a little deeper, it really just falls apart.
Well, Jerry, can I add that the recall rights under both forms of government, current and the one we are proposing, are the same. There's no change. So that tool for accountability exists. And I think with the initiative and referendum rights, again, the voters get more power not to just wait for the election cycle to make changes they want, but change something midway if the council is doing something or not doing something that's egregious.
Yeah,
so I think
that's exactly right.
This format gives people more accountability, not less.
All right, thank you. Next question, popular one. Is this going to impact my taxes?
I can take this one too if you guys are okay. It's not going to impact our taxes by itself, right? The taxes are going to be what they're going to be. Unfortunately, they keep going up, but this form of government by itself is not going to matter to the tax decision at all. The only additional cost I can think of is the $7,500 per council member as a stipend that's paid. And as Joanna said earlier, I think it's 68 cents per residence per year. There's not any bigger government. There are no new positions or departments or anything like that that's created. So we're not really adding to the size of our government at all. We have 2 additional members, but yes, you have a $75 million budget. We know from interviews that people currently on the council are overworked, and it's not a full-time job. These are volunteers serving these positions. So in recognition of that, we recommended 2 more people, but it's not going to impact taxes. In fact, I hope with more eyes on the budget, it probably saves wastage and saves us from disaster projects like Complete Streets in the past.
And in theory, by the way, Yeah, we keep mentioning the $7,500 per person. In theory, the council, if this passes, could say, "Hey, we have two more people. It's sharing the burden of the work, so we're going to reduce that fee from 7,500 to 5,000, and
Ooh,
it eliminates everything
I
altogether."
like
So
that.
We don't have the
Right?
power to say that to them, though.
Go
It's up to
Cory
them
Biller.
to
I
do
like that.
All right. All right. Next question. Won't a bigger council just create more gridlock?
Mm, I mean, we were a group of five, right? And I felt like it would be nice to share the burden with a few more people. And we're only in our positions for, we're supposed to be there for 9 months or less, right? So I feel like if I'm being voted in for 3 to 4 years and I'm not, because I'm not running for anything after this, I'm only volunteering for free. I feel like it creates less gridlock. I think the smaller councils are prone to more gridlock. Like with 5 members, a single recusal can actually easily lead to a 2-2 tie, right? With few opportunities to break out of it. 7 gives you more of a buffer. I mean, I guess the problem in the past has not been the gridlock. I think the problem has been decisions getting rammed through without enough eyes on them. I mean, without enough deliberation and without enough people asking hard questions. So I think 7 members means more robust discussions and digging into the details and coming back to the full council with the real analysis. I mean, instead of poorly formed decisions quickly moving through small town, you get a genuine engagement with the substance before decision gets made.
Well,
More
can
voices,
I
more scrutiny. That's my opinion.
can I add to that, Joanna? Because
Sure.
people may not appreciate the practical issues with the five-member council. Because under what is it called, sunshine laws or something,
Yep.
more than two people cannot meet at a time without a noticed meeting. So the subcommittees are forced to be 2 members only in a five-member council. That's what Joanna was referring to, not
Yeah.
because
Sorry. That's a good
there is
clarification.
legally you cannot have more than 2 people on a committee meet at the time. And when we were elected as five-member charter commission, we realized the practical issue it was creating for us. Going to a 7-member council helps with creating a 3-member subcommittee that can have a more robust discussion and hence hopefully present a more complete picture to the full council when it comes to making decisions. So that practical consideration is super important when it comes to the size of the council.
Yep.
All right, next question. I received a mailer from the No people claiming developers could hijack the referendum process. Is this true?
I can take that because I already started talking about it little earlier. Again, it's more fear mongering without any basis in fact. This is actually one of the more puzzling claims that the people have made. And it just frankly reflects a fundamental misunderstanding, and I'll use the term misunderstanding to be a little nicer of how the process actually works. Rather than just saying it's a complete outright fraud. Um, let's put it this way: to use the initiative and referendum, somebody first has to collect signatures from 15% of the voters who participated in the last general election. Then the proposed ordinance would go to the ballot, and then a majority of the Millburn residents would have to actually vote on it. So, what the no folks are trying to argue is that it's somehow easier for a developer to first collect all these signatures and then convince a majority of the Millburn voters that um, it's better to
To do
to
what they
vote
want.
on this thing. So in theory, they're trying to say that it's easier to do that than to just simply have an interest, put your people up on your on the township committee that will vote in the way you want, and just have them vote that way. It's just logically it doesn't make any sense. And a resident usually recently asked me, didn't the developers really already run roughshod over the town? And quite frankly, the that's the exact point. The answer is yes. The current system is actually the one that's more easily prone to developers taking advantage and special interests taking advantage. And I mentioned it earlier. There is a former township committee member who has already outed this current process and the current committee as having engaged in um, offering contracts to certain developers and certain corruptions as a fundamental aspect of our current partisan system. And that person had participated in some of our public meetings. This person was in favor of our recommendation. And then after the report came out, it seems like this person is now on the no side, which is kind of interesting. It sort of begs the question of is what this person was probably promised to flip. But ironically, they're now trying to mislead the electorate in order to protect their ability to choose candidates who are easily controlled and manipulated by the special interests. And here's the ultimate irony. The No campaign is being funded by the same people who are endorsing the politicians who gave Millburn several bad deals, including housing deals and other things. And so you just got to ask yourself why. Why is the No campaign being funded by certain people and trying to create an impression that this would allow for special interests when in fact they are the special interests and they're the ones taking advantage of special interests and proliferating that under our current system.
All right, great. One of the no arguments is that authority is given to a manager that is appointed rather than elected. Can you explain that?
Sure, Chris Trucker here. Again, I'm going to say for 41 years, Millburn Township has an appointed business administrator who serves a professional management role. This position serves at the pleasure of the Township Committee. Under the new form, the business administrator position would simply become the township manager position. The opposition is trying to frame this as a big change, when in reality, it's how we've been operating for more than 4 decades. The professional management of our town is something that we've found works well in practice. It helped us obtain and keep our AAA municipal bond rating. The new form codifies the professional management argument under state law. And folks, again, they're trying to spin this as something that, we came up with. I've known, as I said, I've been here since 1981. I've known Tim Gordon for forever. I've known Alex McDonald, Joanna Parker Lenz, and myself. We and various other folks. We work really, really well with Alex. Just ask Joanna on how many volunteer things she does, how many initiatives she brings to the township. So this is a total falsehood that they are trying to give the township people. Thanks.
Okay, so if this passes on June 16th, what happens next?
I can take that. So if this passes, all 7 council seats will be up for election in November. New officials will take their seats in Jan, and there'll be an organization meeting in Jan when council members will draw lots to determine who will serve a 2-year term and who will serve a 4-year term, just by lot draw. 4 council members will serve 2 years to initiate the staggered election cycle going forward. And there was a question in the chat. I want to address that. Somebody asked if this will overturn, passing this referendum will overturn prior elections, as all TC members would need to rerun. It's not, it doesn't overturn anything technically, but the charter under which the current TC members are elected is no longer the charter of the town. So in that sense, they're all vacating their positions, and whoever chooses to run can rerun again under the new charter. But it's not about overturning, it's about choosing a different path going forward. And we need to have that one-time switch when new members are elected. Hopefully I answered that question there because it's related.
All right, cool. Why are we having a special election in June for this? Why not put it on the November ballot when everyone is already voting anyway?
I've been asked this a lot in our focus groups and private meetings I've had with people. And I think this was a personal issue for me. And people can go back and watch that recording. We debated it extensively. Corey and I think in particular, were having a big issue with that scenario. We discussed, behind the scenes as our only group of two, as per sunshine laws, right? So, and I guess for me, it became just it's a trade-off, right? There's always trade-offs in life, and I realized after Chinook kind of brought me around in that public meeting that if we'd waited for November, the new council elections would have landed in May of 2027. Then we're putting our elections on a spring cycle right in the middle of budget season. So now new council members would have to inherit a budget that they had no hand in creating, which is kind of the chaotic handoff that I think Jerry was saying we're trying to fix. And given that our main findings was that constant elections wreak havoc on the governance, and that was told to us by municipal employees, by past TC members, and the constant elections, it just doesn't allow for a smooth transition. So we were like, okay, give it its proper attention. The practical problem of putting the referendum on a November ballot alongside two township committee seats, voters now have to, be asked to vote for committee members at the same time as being asked to vote for all the other seats that they've got to vote for. And they wouldn't know what they're going to vote for six months, 3 years. So the special election gives Millburn the clarity and focus for this one singular question. And I figured this is so important. Why not give it the attention that it's due by letting people focus on it right now and not be distracted by any other election? So to me, this seemed like ultimately a clean transition, and those who are running can run a normal campaign and know what they're running for in November.
Can I highlight that, Joanna? So what would happen is if we had the election in November, one of the things you're saying, and I want to make it clear, is that people would be voting for two committee members under the current form, and also whether or not to change the form of government.
Yeah.
So if they would elect two committee members, you would have four people running, spending the money, spending the effort, spending the time. And if they're elected on the same day that the township votes yes and changes the form of government, that would have been an entire waste of effort and time and money and stuff for those four people. And then we'd have to hold a special election again in May,
following spring or the following November.
So it unfortunately, like you said, there's gives and takes, and unfortunately the pros to having it on June 16th seem to outweigh the cons.
Well, look, I also want to add that this was a tough decision, right? I mean, we have to acknowledge that generally speaking, November elections have a larger turnout. So the criticism that, hey, the turnout is going to be lower in June is valid because special elections don't tend to have as large a turnout as a November election. But that's the reason some of us are out there spreading the word and trying to get people out and hosting forums like this. And to the extent the No campaign is driving turnout, I appreciate that too, because it is we're taking it on us to get the word out and let as many people as possible know that this referendum is happening. But again, it was a tough choice. We weighed the pros and cons, and we are in favor of the special elections for all the reasons that Joanna laid out and Corey just emphasized.
All right, let's jump to the next question. All right, so will this affect the schools?
No.
I mean, a straight no.
One
would answer no.
I guess there's no impact on the schools. The schools are run by the Board of Education. The policy for the school is set by the Board of Education, I should say. They're a separate elected body, and nothing about this referendum will impact the Board of Education or the school system. This change is solely related to the municipal government, and that's the local government that's in charge of our infrastructure, public safety, zoning, the sort of day-to-day that keeps our town running. It has nothing to do with and no impact on the schools.
Okay, we're going to jump to some more questions from the audience. Okay, we have one from Nick Romano for Corey. The purpose of the June 16th vote is to determine which form of government would best serve the town. Your role in the committee was to help evaluate the options and identify the most appropriate governing structure through that process. It has been suggested that your concern was rooted in your past inability to run on the Democratic line. As you move through the Charter Commission process, what mattered more to you? The opportunity to run for township office or what you sincerely believe is in the town's best interest? Lastly, being involved in selecting candidates seeking the endorsement of the MSH Democratic Committee, I don't recall you ever seeking the endorsement.
Yeah, no, I'm glad this question was asked. I heard it's been on Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't see it. I don't get an opportunity to respond. Primarily, look, the first thing is I ran for this commission as for the same reason I do everything for this township. I volunteer for the planning board. I've been on the July 4th committee. I've headed the July 4th committee. Nick Romano knows that because he's been on the committee with me. Everything I do for this town is for the betterment of this town, not for anything I do. And to clarify, the question is based on again false information. And I'm surprised Nick doesn't know because I was offered the Democratic line 3 times, no less than 3 times. February 2nd, 2026, Jackie Lieberberg offered me this year the line. February 7th, 2024, Jackie Lieberberg offered me the line. And in fact, interestingly, on February 28th, 2017, Annette Romano, Nick's wife, offered me the line. So I've been offered the line no less than 3 times. So that's not an issue for me. And in fact, when I turned down the line, Annette Romano, and I quote, wrote in an email, "I'm so sorry to hear that you decided not to. You are the perfect candidate. You know so much about the current issues of the township." And then she goes on to talk about the reasons why I declined it. So, bottom line is one, the question is based on a fallacy. I have been actually offered the line at least 3 different times. And bottom line is no. My interest in this commission was purely out of what I saw as potential ways to better Millburn Township. So I appreciate the question and the opportunity to answer it.
All right, thanks. Next question is from Tim Dawson. Did you study any towns that added to the number of committee members, changed from partisan to nonpartisan, and elected an entire new council all in a less than 6-month time period? If so, what was their experience?
Sure. I'm happy to take that question. So we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Red Bank was the most recent municipality to convert. They converted from a borough council form to a 7-person nonpartisan council manager form. So their transition happened in 2023. What they did was in November of 2022, they had the referendum question alongside 2 council members for their borough council. The referendum passed, and they had elections for all 7 members of their council in the following May. So from that November to that May, that was a 6-month period. Their prior form of government had 6 council members, so they went from 6 to 7. And it used to be partisan with annual elections, so they went from partisan to nonpartisan. And their experience with that transition, by all accounts, was actually, very smooth. They told us in a public interview, I believe it was in mid-March, that their new form of government has much better transparency and accountability. And the escape from the toxic annual election cycle has worked out very well. What they did actually say, which informed why we didn't go with the November and May timeline, is that if you have elections in May, you actually have to move them back to November. And there's no guarantee that the new council elected would move May elections to November. The other thing that they did point out as well was the 2 council members that were elected in at the same time the referendum passed, those 2 people served for exactly 6 months. And those people actually, in the 6 months that they were elected to serve, actively tried to undermine the new form of government. So let me repeat that. The people that were elected at the same time the referendum passed actively tried to undermine the transition. And that was one of the reasons why the chair of the Charter Commission in Red Bank why she decided to run for council, because she thought that that behavior was just so terrible. And that's actually one of the things you would be vulnerable to if you had the referendum at the same time as electing people to a form of government that is winding down.
All right, thanks, Jerry. This question is from Janet. Thank you for this opportunity. I've heard mostly from the Vote No crew, so asking for a better understanding of the rationale for cutting short some individuals' terms on the township committee. Wouldn't it make sense if this passes to place those individuals on the new rolls?
Sorry, did you say on the new rolls?
Yeah, I think
Well,
the question is, I
In
think it
new
gets,
rolls?
yeah, I think the question gets to, hey, look, there are currently people who are elected. If this passes, why not just continue them and I guess elect new people? And the bottom line is, and we mentioned it earlier, is that if this passes, the township would be operating under a new charter, so we would have no choice but to have an election for all 7 members. If it passes as a 7-member council, and have an election for all those 7 members. We couldn't just decide to allow the 5 people or actually it'd be 3, whose terms were not up to continue under the former charter.
Well,
we
Corey,
just
can
don't
you
have the power
clarify
to do
further
that.
that it is not up to us?
It's not up to us,
This
exactly.
we're not making up the rules. Because
Right.
if we had to make up
Sorry.
the
That's what
rules,
I
we give you a
I
checklist.
thought that was implied, but yeah. So we're operating based on New Jersey law that does
State
not
law.
allow that.
Yes.
We had a legal team advise us through this entire process. Because if we had our choice, we'd be like, put a checklist of all things that we recommend to let people choose what they want. We can't do that.
And while we're on the subject of that question, let me just say the transition is sort of defined very specifically in the Faulkner Act, which governs the entire change of form of government process. So this is not something that we could have recommended. The idea of ranked choice voting is also something that is not allowed in New Jersey. So that came up multiple times during our study. People suggested looking into it. The answer is unequivocally no, that is not allowed in the state of New Jersey. So until such time as the state legislature decides to revise the Faulkner Act, we won't have ranked choice voting as an option. We can't, as a charter study commission, recommend that the people elected under township committee serve under the council manager form.
I have a question. If we go to a Faulkner form and it becomes legal in New Jersey, could we then have that transition because the power to the people?
You mean rank
so-
choice?
Right.
That
So-
would be up to the council, right?
I suspect, Joanna, what you're suggesting is if the Faulkner Act is revised to allow for ranked choice voting, would we be able to convert to it? Based on how they've done revisions to the Faulkner Act, I would imagine that that is possible. But I suspect that that would only be possible under Faulkner Act forms of government.
Well,
and so
correct,
if we
yeah.
were in township committee, we would
Yeah.
not have that
did
reform
not,
available to us because
But if
the
people
state is
want
not
it,
active. Yes. The
if
state
people
is not
want it.
actively updating the township committee form of government. It's one of those things where it's like software development, right? Like the township committee form of government is like a very old and deprecated version that no one is updating anymore. If anyone's going to change the rules or something, it will be under the Faulkner Act and the council manager form.
Right. That's what I'm trying to get at. So my Dell computer that I'm on right now, that's plugged into the wall, because I love it so much, because it's my old form of computerness, and I don't want to change it because I don't love that change for technology. So I can never have access to this new technology that might be available. But if I were on a new computer and the new form, I would have access to it. So I'm just trying to liken it in my own little brain of, okay, if we do go to Faulkner form and there are changes for ranked choice voting, a lot of people have said to me, can't you make that recommendation? Well, we can, but we can't because it doesn't exist in New Jersey. It's not legal, but we could in the future. So that's all I wanted to get at.
But long story short, talk to your state legislators. And also, if you wanted township committee people to serve on council manager, talk to your state legislators about updating how the Faulkner Act is structured. But that's not something we were allowed to do.
Yeah, we can't do that. So sorry.
Can I just pile on and add one more thing that has come up? Some people have asked if we could have prevented candidates from taking money from if the parties choose to endorse someone or donate money to somebody's campaign, the Charter Commission cannot make rules about that. That's the whoever takes money from parties will have to disclose it under normal disclosure requirements. So it will hopefully be known to the public.
Can you really highlight that? Because people think that it's not disclosable and it's not public information. It is 100% public information,
Well,
right?
first of all, I think somebody's party affiliation is public information, right? So that should be available to people. And if somebody chooses, if a party chooses to endorse someone, that would by definition be public. And if the party chooses to donate to somebody's campaign, that would be public information too at certain
Over
point in time
$200, right?
when the reports are due. We cannot make those rules. We don't have the Charter Commission does not have the legal power to make those rules. And the form of government we're recommending is not because we don't like Democrats or Republicans or anybody else. It's just to level the playing field between everybody, right? Everybody, either even if they're Democrat or Republican or unaffiliated, will have an equal shot, will have an equal access to the ballot real estate, as I call it. And nobody will have a specific advantage or a disadvantage. So that's the purpose here. It's not to say that you should not be a member of any party. Obviously, it's your choice. Anyways, I digress. So, Matt, back to you.
Well said, Chinook. Very well said.
All right, another question. Unsure where this came from, but what other alternatives were considered?
So
I can start off, Jerry. Maybe why don't you start? Go ahead.
okay, yeah. So the main alternative that was considered is the other sort of big elephant in the room called mayor council. So mayor council is the other sort of paradigm that municipalities operate under. So the two main ones are mayor council and council manager. They are based off of two different sort of ways of governance. So council manager is based off of corporate governance, and mayor council is based off of like the federal government. So in mayor council, you directly elect a mayor who serves as an executive function, so analogous to the president. And the council is essentially purely legislative, so like Congress, or like the governor and the state assembly, for example. You'll see mayor council in a lot of large cities. So West Orange is mayor council. Jersey City is mayor council. Newark is mayor council. In smaller towns, you'll more often see council manager. So that was the main alternative that was considered. We decided not to go with mayor council because we felt that in a town our size, it doesn't really make sense to consolidate all of the executive power in an elected individual. We didn't think that there would be many individuals who would be up to that task to serve, to basically give up their job and become a full-time executive. And also, in a mayor council form, whenever the mayor changes, the entire administration changes. So, what we found was the 41 years of a business administrator in town with the professional management, that's provided great continuity. In a mayor council form, every time the mayor changes, you have a whole new administration. You're going to have whole new people running the staff. It's a little bit too much change for a town our size. And just one anecdote as an example as to where mayor council has a failure point. So West Orange has a mayor council form of government. Their mayor wanted to choose a planner for the next round of affordable housing, and the council disagreed with that choice of planner. And so what they did is the council holds the purse strings. They chose not to pay for the planner that the mayor wanted. And that caused so much complication. There was so much gridlock and impasse that they missed all of their deadlines for the fourth round of affordable housing. And now West Orange is being hit by 6 or 7 builders' remedies, if I'm not mistaken. So adding that level of complication to the structure was just not something that we felt was a good choice for our town. And Shaunak, I think you wanted to.
I was just gonna say that look, there are parts of our government that are working well, right? And the choice we have made retains those parts, and that's the professional administration that we have. So that was very deliberate on our part. We didn't think we needed a strong mayor form of government, which is what the mayor council is. All those would have been radical changes that people already accusing us of making. But really, we voted in favor of continuity, in favor of addressing weaknesses that were identified during our process. But Jerry, you covered what I wanted to say, so that's good.
Okay, another question. Did the movement to look at our form of government start in 2021-22 when the fair share housing settlement created a lot of anger in the community? Was this a genesis for the referendum being placed on the ballot? Wasn't there an effort to recall the mayor and deputy mayor at that time, led by Democrats and Republicans and unaffiliated residents joining later, becoming an idea to have a referendum on the ballot to do a study?
Look, I don't know when the movement, if you will, started for this charter committee to look at the forms of government. All I know is that when it was put on the ballot, it was passed overwhelmingly by I think it was 65% of those who voted. And what sort of caused it to come to be is sort of water under the bridge at this point. It was on the ballot. It was passed. We've now conducted our research. We've done a study, and now is the point of a recommendation. I do think, though, that the desire for this commission and to look at the form of government was supported both by Democrats, Republicans, and independent voters in our town. I think that's the most important thing.
All right, thank you. Question from Jim Horgan. What are the biggest concerns of detractors or those who oppose this form of government?
I guess, well, what is their lawn sign says something about bigger government, no transparency. I guess the bigger government I'll tackle, which is, look, there's no municipal staff positions getting added. We're adding 2 council members that essentially work for less than minimum wage. These council members don't have staffs with them, they're volunteers. The government is not getting bigger. Just because 7 is greater than 5 doesn't mean there's going to be more bureaucracy. If anything, the additional 2 pairs of eyes that we have on the budget is going to make sure there's more thought that goes into the money that's spent. I think their other thing is transparency, which I take it means they want to know what someone's party is. People's party registrations in the state of New Jersey are public record, so you can look that up. Campaign finance, as we said earlier, is also public record for any donation over $200. So, it's in terms of the campaign financing aspect, it's literally exactly as transparent as it is now. And
Sorry,
I think
even currently elections being Democrat Republican, you still don't necessarily know who you're voting for. I mean, I'll take, somebody mentioned Tara Prupus earlier. Tara Prupus changed parties 13 days before she was announced as the Democratic nominee by the party. So, and then other people, again, and I mentioned this earlier, just because you have a D or an R, you don't know. You could have a Democrat who voted for a Republican. So it doesn't give you any more transparency, and in fact, arguably gives you less transparency having party official labels tied to elections.
All right. Coming up with the next question from Praveen. All right, so what is the point of being a mayor? What special capacity does that position have?
I think I tried to answer that in my written comments that I could do while we were talking. But look, there's no change really in how the mayor's position works under the new form versus the current form, right? It is a ceremonial post largely. The mayor has the power to get somebody married, if I understood that correctly. But it's a first amongst equals, and it does bring with it some privileges of some appointments to certain boards, and somebody else here might have a better answer for that. But most importantly, it is again that role is continuing in its form largely, not changing. So if you ask me what is the purpose of somebody being a mayor, one, it's a ceremonial post. Two, you're representing the town. There are in front of county or in front of other state authorities. And more importantly, you are conducting the meeting, right? You're setting the agenda, you're conducting the meeting. It is an important role. I don't want to discount it, but from a authority perspective, it's a first amongst equals role. So I hope that answers, but anybody else wants to add?
Yeah, I'll just add that the main purpose of the mayor in the council manager form of government is to serve as the chair of the council.
Correct.
So they run the meetings, and essentially, you want the chair of the legislative council to be able to have the confidence of a majority of the council. So, in almost all legislatures, General Assembly, House of Representatives, the people don't directly elect the Speaker of the House or the Speaker of the Assembly, right? So, essentially, the mayor is the chair of the council, and you want the mayor to always essentially represent to first order a majority of the council. In the council manager form, the mayor is also generally the conduit to the manager. So, the mayor themselves can't, make decisions on behalf of the whole body. That's why in the township committee and in the council manager forms, the mayor is just one vote among all the other members. And so, what the reason why you would not want a directly elected mayor is because the mayor doesn't have any more power than the rest of them. But what they do act as is to consolidate all the feedback from the council and communicate that to the manager.
Okay. Next question is from Subhadra. If the township manager is intended to be more independent and insulated from politics, what mechanisms exist for residents to hold that individual accountable if they disagree with operational decisions?
Well, the mechanism is really through the elected body. The council manager, the manager serves at the pleasure of the council, and a majority vote of the council can appoint or remove that position, the individual from that position. Again, there are statutory protections that the manager does have if the council were to take that step. So the voters can hold the individual accountable through the elected representatives. And it's similar currently. Again, currently it would take a vote of 4 out of 5 to make changes to that position. But again, as we said before, and now it will take a vote of 4 out of 7. But as we said before, the ordinance that currently has created that position can be reversed through, again, a majority of the township committee vote in the current form. So uh, the mechanism to hold the business manager or as business administrator or the council manager, as they will now be called, is similar. It's through the council, elected representatives. Anybody
Yeah.
else wants to
And
ask?
let me just make sure I answer the question. So, question said, what mechanisms exist for residents to hold that individual accountable if they disagree with operational decisions? I would say exactly the same mechanisms that are available now if you disagree with the decisions of the business administrator. If you disagree with anything Alex McDonald does, you can talk to the township committee about it. And in the future, if you disagree with what the manager does, you talk to the council about it. I don't think any of that is changing under the new form.
You said it better, Jerry. Thank you.
Okay, one last question here. Wouldn't voting yes make the business administrator more vulnerable to political influence by making him subject to removal by a single majority rather than the 80% supermajority required under the current system?
Well, it's not 80% supermajority first. It is more than 2/3, right? That's how supermajority is defined. Just the math works out to 80 because it's 4 out of 5, because 3 out of 5 is 60%, not 66. Uh, what I would say two things, and Jerry, I'm sure you'll have more to add here too. One, under the new system, you will still need 4 out of 7 votes. Today, you need 4 out of 5 votes. You still need 4 people to agree to make a change. It is a majority. It's not a supermajority anymore. So that is a difference. But under the new system, there is a right that the manager gets to make their case. It's not just automatic. They get a chance to be heard too. And as we pointed out before, the ordinance that has created the business administrator position today can be changed by a simple majority. So the idea that, oh, it takes 4 out of 5 people today to remove the administrator is correct, but it's not. You can change the law itself and have that position not exist anymore by a simple majority. So it's not. It's really.
Right, which would
It's
only be
not.
3 votes today.
Right.
Sorry, three out of five
I,
votes can change the position itself or change the existence of that position. So it is. Yes, you need supermajority under the ordinance, but the ordinance itself is subject to majority, right? So it's a falsehood that's what it. I mean, it's not a falsehood,
yeah.
but
Well, it's
I'm not.
illusory.
Yeah, that's the better
It's
word.
illusory,
Yes, it's
right? So
illusory.
like if you had 3 out of 5 township committee members today that wanted to get rid of the business administrator, all they have to do is remove the business administrator position entirely from our town code. And they only need a simple majority to do that. And once it's removed, they can bring it back in exactly the same iteration and appoint someone else. So the 2/3 supermajority removal for the BA, that's entirely illusory. The question asks about political influence and vulnerability to it. Right now, if they wanted to dismiss the business administrator, they could do so without cause. They could do it by the next meeting. You would never see the business administrator again at a public meeting. Under council manager, there is the right of reply, and they have to explain it in a public meeting. So that in and of itself would prevent more political influence from, meddling with the manager's business, so to speak.
All right, great. Now we'll have some concluding remarks.
I mean,
Are we tackling costs? Do we know?
I read a question on cost. I don't know the cost of the current election.
We're holding another meeting next week, right? And I know we're approaching like 3 minutes to the end. So could we potentially have all questions that may not have been answered yet? Like, can we answer them next week?
Yeah, so why don't we keep the Google form open that folks have already
keep the
submitted questions
coming.
to? Yeah, keep the questions coming. We'll have another session next week, and we'll make sure all of the questions get answered. There's also, if you go to millburncharter.org, which is our charter commission website, there's also a phone number and an email. So folks can also reach out to us that way.
I would say, look, my conclusion, the concluding statement I would make is that if you're still on the fence, first of all, reach out to any of us. We are happy to give you answers based on the actual research and facts and data and information that we collected. We interviewed every single township committee member since I think 1991.
Not every single.
The majority of so many
70.
There was one member of every township committee that we have
Right.
going back 35 years that we have.
Since 1991, we interviewed township employees, we interviewed other township representatives and employees. We did empirical research, and so my point is that the answers we're giving are based on data and information actually collected. The No campaign, to be quite frank, is funded by an organization that has a self-interest to stay in power, who hired a marketing company and a political activist to help them create misinformation and, frankly, in some instances, outright falsehoods. So if you want to compare what's out there from the No and from our suggested, read the study. The study is very, very long. It's very comprehensive. It's backed by empirical information, by information actually gathered. It's not speculation. It's not fear mongering. It's not red herrings, which is what the No campaign is. So I encourage you to reach out. Please ask questions. Don't make assumptions. Look at the where the money is coming from. It is publicly available and make your informed decision off of that.
Well said, Corey.
And keep tuning in, please.
Yes. Yep.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
No.
All right, well, look, thank everyone for their questions tonight. Thank you for the commissioners for 5 months of hard work on behalf of this community. As mentioned earlier, there'll be a special election held on Tuesday, June 16th. The polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. This is the only question on the ballot. There's no early voting, and you can apply to vote by mail prior to June 9th. As also mentioned, there tends to be another Q&A session with the commissioners sometime next week. Please visit millburncharter.org for more information. Thanks again. Everyone have a great evening.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt, for hosting. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Matt.